Welcome back, everybody. So I have one final wrap-up video to do for God of War 2018. So I had some requests to talk about Valkyries and also to talk a little bit about my own gaming experience. So maybe I'll talk about my own gaming experience just really briefly first, and that will hopefully help to set your expectations for when I play God of War Ragnarok, which I should be starting almost right away. So yeah, let's get right to it. So I have been playing games either on consoles or on computers since I was young. I'm I predate the internet, so and I predate a lot of home computers as well. So I started off with the regular Nintendo and went from there. We were very much a Nintendo household, and from a young age, I became really, really obsessed with The Legend of Zelda and that entire universe, and that has sort of carried me through to the present day. I think one of my favorite games of all time up until recently was Breath of the Wild, and that was only um, kind of demoted because of Tears of the Kingdom coming out. So I'm really a huge Zelda fan. I think it's a phenomenal game. I love the lore behind it. I love the entire world that it is built. And, I very much sort of stayed within the sort of Nintendo universe. I played, you know, older games on PCs growing up, but nothing really to the level of God of War. So kind of stepping into this as a player is new for me. And it will, I think, be a bit of a learning curve, but I'm really excited to be able to start doing this. I've obviously played other games aside from Legend of Zelda. I like games with stories. And so I think that's what really intrigued me about God of War. So I hope that answers your questions about my gaming experience. And I do intend to start playing Ragnarok pretty much right away now. I had a few things going on over the last couple of weeks, but now I am ready to really begin in earnest and have figured out a way to kind of start recording my gameplay and my reactions simultaneously. So hopefully that will be coming soon, and go easy on me. I've been showing you some pretty amazing gameplay from a couple of my amazing followers lately, and I am confident that nothing I do will compare to that. So, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for my gaming abilities. I'm here for what I can tell you about uh, what what the game makers are doing with regard to how they're engaging with the world of Norse mythology and the Viking Age. And I had a number of requests to talk about Valkyries. So let's get to that. Okay, so I had a lot of fun with this because I had to sort of go and look at some resources that told me the different Valkyries because I did not see all of them. So as you know, I was working with other people's gameplay first for the majority of it with my brother's gameplay, and then finishing off with gameplay from a couple of my viewers. So I know I missed a lot of the Valkyries, and that's something I do intend to go back and do at some point on my own. So what I did is I sort of looked up on some of the fandom pages the list of Valkyries. I know that we encountered some of them, and I have talked about some of them as we've seen them. But I kind of wanted to go through them all and let you know in what way they line up with the source material we have. So I'm going to go in the same order that they're listed on the God of War fandom webpage. And all of the images that I will be showing are also from the God of War fandom page. And I'll kind of include the image credits at the bottom as well. So we're going to start off with Gunar, who is Mistress of War. So Gunar, Mistress of War, is the first of the Valkyries in the list, and I can't actually remember if this is one that we encountered or not, but in any case, This is a Valkyrie who is mentioned in the sources available to us. In fact, they all are in some way or another. So it was kind of a little bit of detective work for me because, they're in a lot of different sources. Anyway, so Gunar, Mistress of War, as she's known in God of War 2018, is mentioned in Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda. And again, that is a great translation that you can access is Jesse Bayak's translation. Jackson Crawford has also worked on translations of a lot of this material as well. And a lot of this is very readily available online. So I'm just going to quote the passage from Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda, which again is one of our two main sources on Norse mythology, written in the 13th century by this kind of really prolific Icelander who was very well connected, well educated, and wrote not only about mythology, but also about Norwegian kings and the origins of different Norwegian dynasties, as well as possibly one saga. So what Snorri tells us is he's kind of talking about, he mentions Gunar within the context of a section on Valkyries. And he says, and I'm quoting here from Jesse Bayak's translation, which I just showed you, and I'll have here as well. These women are called Valkyries. They are sent by Odin to do battle, where they choose which men are to die, and they determine who has the victory. Gun or Gunur is the R is the case ending for the subject case. So when you see the R there, it's just as opposed to Gun, that's the kind of more traditional and true to the original language name. Gun and Rota and the youngest Norn Skuld always ride to choose the slain and to determine the outcome of a battle. So the Valkyries, I think I've talked about this a few times before, but the name Valkyrie it means chooser of the slain. And that is what their job is to do. They are sort of semi-divine women who ride over the battlefield and choose which of the slain in battle are going to go to either Odin's Hall of Valhalla, or the Hall of the Slain, or to Freya's Hall of Folkvanger. There doesn't seem to be any real rhyme or reason to why some go to Odin's Hall and the other go to Freya's, but they do kind of have, as one of my viewers pointed out, shared custody over the chosen slain. So Gunar, that's really all we get about her. And Mistress of War fits very well with the fact that she is one of the Valkyries who is named and, is said to have been sent by Odin to go over the chosen slain and determine who has the victory. And that's also interesting because it tells us not only that they choose which of the slain are going to come to either Valhalla or Folkvanger, but they actually determine who is going to die on the battlefield, and they have some influence over who is going to have the victory. And we do have some indications in the sources that Odin often tells them what he wants to happen. And we know this because there is a Valkyrie named Brynhild, and she's known from the Sigurd the Dragon Slayer legend. And she gets in a lot of trouble because she defies Odin's orders, and he punishes her. So it's not just about, them sort of fulfilling this in some way, kind of, a male fantasy of, choosing the chosen slain. They're often portrayed as beautiful, and they serve the chosen slain in Valhalla, but they actually have this power to determine who is going to live or die in the battlefield and who has the victory. And again, they're connected very much to Odin or to Freya. So the next one in the list that I was referencing is named Gerdrivul. And I do remember encountering Gerdrivul. So in the list on the God of War fandom page, it indicates that she is the master of arms. And that is really fitting for the name because Gerdrivul, it's a name that means basically spear driver. So Ger means spear. We know a lot less about Gerdrivel. Basically, she's only named once, and she's named in a section of Snorri's Edda that really isn't often included in the English translations. And Byax is no exception here. And it's a section called the Natnathulur, or the verse list of names. And basically, she's just listed among a whole bunch of other Valkyries, and there's nothing else about her. But they do, it's a really cool name, and it is one that's really fitting with what they kind of decide that she's going to be in terms of her function within this storyline. Another one that I do remember encountering through the gameplay that I've been reacting to is the healer. So the name might mean something along the line of merciful. I know I talked about her before. So she's actually listed in Snorri's Prose Edda as one of the goddesses, and she is the third goddess that he names in his list. He names first Frigg, and describes her briefly, and then he moves to Saga, and then the third is Eir. So whether that's significant or not entirely clear. We don't really see her outside of this. And what Snorri says about her is that she is the best of doctors. But that's really it. But there is some kind of prominence in terms of where she's listed among the goddesses, though it's not said that she's a Valkyrie. But again, the fact that she's said to be the best of doctors and that she's a healer within this game, again, they know what they're doing. We start to get more from here on out for the remainder of the Valkyries. The next one is Kaura, or Kara, that is listed as the Wild Storm. So I'll pronounce her name as Kaura, which is how you pronounce the A with the accent above it. And she's a Valkyrie who is named in, there's kind of a prose epilogue to the second poem of Helgi Hundingsbani. And this is part of the poetic Edda that follows the mythological poems. Actually, like less than half of the poems in the poetic Edda are strictly mythological, and far more than half are on heroic topics. So topics related to, the Volsungs and Attila the Hun and Sigurd the Dragon Slayer and all of these things. And so that's where she appears. She appears in this second poem of Helgi Hundingsbani, who is a half-brother of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. And her name, Kaura, means either the wild one or the stormy one. So to be the wild storm, once again, they did their research. So in the second lay of Helgi Hundingsbani, there is this prose epilogue, or kind of basically the poetry ends, then we get this little prose bit to finish things off. And here she is said to be Kaura, the daughter of a man named Halfdan, and she is said to be the reincarnation of the Valkyrie Sigrun. I'll come back to that. And Sigrun is Helgi's Valkyrie lover in the poem, who dies of sorrow and grief after Helgi is slain, and he too is reincarnated in turn. So they both get reincarnated, she as Kaura and he as another Helgi. But that's pretty much, again, the extent of it. So we'll come back to Sigrun because she is also on our list of Valkyries. Rota, the chooser of the slain. We've already kind of read the section about her, but I will put it up here again. She is mentioned right alongside Gunar as one of the three named Valkyries. So Gun, Rota, and the youngest Norn Skuld ride to choose the slain and to decide the outcome of a battle. So again, not much more on her. But the next one that I have on the list, so again, that was Rota, chooser of the slain. So fits within that as well. The next one, we do have a lot more. So she's definitely a contrast to the previous one. And her name is Ölrun, which she is named as the Valkyrie historian. There's quite a bit of information on her. She features very prominently in one of the poems in the Poetic Edda, which is called Völundarkvida, or the poem of Völund. And here, this is kind of an interesting poem. It's one that doesn't fit like super well in either section of mythological poem or heroic poem. Um, it's about a smith, basically, named Völundr or Völund. And here she is listed as one of three swan maidens slash Valkyries who meet and kind of take as her own one of three brothers. And she ends up choosing the brother of Völund, whose name is Eir. And 9 winters later, inexplicably, the women leave the brothers. And two of them, one of whom is Ulrun's guy, Egil, go searching for them, and they leave behind the third brother, Völund. So all of this is kind of backstory for what happens next, which is those two other brothers are gone. So Völund's home, and he's all by himself, which makes it more difficult for him to defend himself. And he's a smith. He's well known for his abilities, and so he's alone, and he becomes imprisoned by a local king, who basically imprisons him, and he forces him to make all kinds of stuff for him. Eventually, though, he gets his revenge. So we don't really get much about Ulrun other than that she was the one who chose Völundar's brother Egil, and in that she was the one in whom he went in search of. So we do get more of her than the others, and she has a more prominent role in the storyline overall, more than just being sort of mentioned offhand as part of a list. Okay, the next one, Gundul. This one is a Valkyrie who I found in quite a lot of sources, more than I have time to enumerate here. But what I can really do for Gundul is I can recommend the Wikipedia entry on her. It's really legit, and they do a really good job looking or at least summarizing a couple of the accounts that involve her. And those are specifically one of the texts from Heimskringla by Snorri Sturluson, as well as a tale. And finally, a 14th century Norwegian text. So Gundul appears in all kinds of sources. So again, these range from the sagas of kings and Norwegian charms to mythological literature. And she's also named in probably what is the most famous of the Icelandic sagas, which is Njal's saga. And again, you can look at her Wikipedia entry, which is very well done. What I will do instead of kind of covering the ground that they've already covered is talk about how she is mentioned in the Eddic poem, The Seeress's Prophecy, or Völuspá. This is the very first poem in the Poetic Edda and the manuscript of the Poetic Edda, the Codex Regius. So it's the poem that starts it all. It's the one where Odin goes and awakens a seeress and asks her all kinds of questions about how the world began and, more importantly, how it's going to end. So in stanza 31, we are told, she, meaning the seeress, saw Valkyries coming from far and wide, ready to ride to the gods' realm. Skuld shouldered one shield, Skogul was another, Gun, Hild, Gundul, and Ger Skogul. Now the general's ladies are counted up, Valkyries ready to ride over the earth. Oh, we do get Gun here as well. So Gun also was mentioned earlier, so she appears in this one as well as Hild, who I'll talk about in just a second. So this is the point at which the seeress that Odin is questioning is describing those events that lead up to Ragnarök. So this stanza in which Gundul is mentioned is within this context. Okay, Hild, as you can see here, is also mentioned, and Hild, Mistress of Battle, is the second to last Valkyrie that I'm going to cover, and that we have to cover in God of War 2018. So Hildr, Mistress of Battle. So Hildr means battle in Old Norse. It's also a very common name for a woman, or kind of a second part of a name for a woman. So you will have women named Hildr, or you will have women named things like Brynhildur or Svanhildur or something like that. So there's all kinds of variations of feminine names that end in Hildur. So you probably noticed, and I just pointed out to you, that she was mentioned in that stanza in the Xerxes prophecy along with Guntul, and she's named in a ton of other Old Norse poems as well. So she shows up in the Xerxes prophecy in the Poetic Edda, and she's also in Snorri's Prose Edda in the section of the Prose Edda called Skaldskaparmal, or the language of poetry. And here she's described as being the daughter of one king who is abducted, and she's then abducted by another king. So according to Snorri's account, she has the ability to bring dead warriors back to life. And what ends up happening is she starts a never-ending battle between her father and the king who kidnapped her. Um, What's interesting about her, though, and what makes it really difficult to really tease out, are these sources talking about Hildur or are they talking about battle, is because her name means battle. So some scholars have noted that it can be really impossible to know whether certain poems are actually referring to her by name or whether they're just referring to battle. What's interesting about manuscripts is there was not standardized spelling, nor was there standardized capitalization, including of personal names. Sometimes you would have personal names be capitalized, but that was absolutely not always the case. And that makes it even more difficult to see whether a particular scribe, when he was copying down a poem, was intending to say, would refer to the Valkyrie Hildur, or whether that scribe was intending to refer to battle. So it becomes a little bit murky in that regard. But for sure, we know that Snorri describes her. And how Snorri describes her is interesting as well, and points to how Valkyries are often also often princesses. They're often royal women who get to live the Valkyrie lifestyle. And if you're looking for an interesting read, I can highly recommend the extremely topical for this video book, Valkyrie, The Women of the Viking World by Johanna Katrin Friedrichsdottir. So Johanna Katrin is she's a wonderful scholar. She has been a consultant on a number of shows. And she has written some phenomenal books on gender in the Viking Age. And this one is very much geared towards a more general audience. So it's not overly dense. It is a very beautifully written work and a really nice read. So if you have been looking to learn more about women in the Viking Age and about Valkyries, but far more than that as well, I can recommend her book. But what she talks about is kind of, this role that a lot of noble women in Old Norse literature play in this kind of version of Old Norse literature that's the equivalent to fantasy literature as we would think about it. A place where, there are dragons and there are all kinds of um, extraordinary things that don't fit within reality. So what Johanna Katrin talks about is how basically we have these noble women who get to live a Valkyrie lifestyle for a while. But what's interesting is in almost every one of those stories, she has to give up that lifestyle eventually and kind of come back and get married and have babies and all of that and do what society demands of her as a woman. So in this one, this is, I guess, a little variation on that. She just ends up playing the role of, every day she's going to revive these two enemies in a never-ending battle. But in the majority of the literature where we do have these noble women who get to play the role of the Valkyrie and take on this lifestyle for a little while, it's always something that they have to give up. It can never be permanent. Okay, and that takes us to Sigrun. Sigrun, who is the Valkyrie Queen, and appropriately named, her name means victory rune. And she is a Valkyrie who I mentioned earlier, who appears in the second as well as the first poem of Helgi Hundingsbani. So there are two different poems about the same hero, the relative of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, and they tell virtually the same story, but with a different ending. And here we see kind of oral tradition at work and how the same story might have evolved in a couple different ways, and maybe a different teller put a little twist on it. Basically, the story goes that the hero Helgi, who is the half brother of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, of the Volsungs, he meets this noblewoman Valkyrie. So we have the classic example of the Princess Valkyrie here. Meets her in the battlefield, and they fall in love with one another. But there's a snag because Sigrun is betrothed to a guy that she really does not want to be betrothed to, a guy named Hodbrod. And she's not happy about it. Helgi's not happy about it. So Helgi goes and wages war on Hodbrod's family. All kinds of stuff happens in the meantime, but basically he wins the battle and he gets Sigrun as his bride. In the first poem, that's where it ends. They live happily ever after. But in the second poem, things go bad. There's a much more tragic account, and Sigrun and Helgi marry, but Helgi is slain by his new brother-in-law, Dag, whom Sigrun curses, and then Sigrun herself dies of grief, although, as the poem tells us in the prose epilogue, she's reincarnated as Kaura. So that's really it for the Valkyries and what I have to tell you about the actual kind of, source, the source-based characters that the game is drawing from. I also had a request to talk about some of Mimir's stories, and I was sort of thinking that I would maybe pay special attention to this in God of War Ragnarok. I think that I missed quite a lot of these in 2018. I know that there were a number that I did get, but I'm confident that there are a number of Mimir stories that I missed as well. And I'm assuming we get more in Ragnarok. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's something I'm going to pay special attention to, and as I start playing. And if there's anything else you want me to make sure to pay special attention to, that you can tell me to focus on without totally giving away what's going to happen, I'd appreciate that. So as always, thank you for your support. Thanks for watching. Please be kind to me, as I know you will. You're all wonderful and supportive. I'm just really nervous to show you my gameplay on a system that I'm not nearly as confident on as I am with the console that I have been playing for quite a long time, and the system I grew up with. So bear with me. I'm super excited to get started. That 2018 was a phenomenal game, and I can only imagine where this one is going to take us. So thanks for your support as always, and we'll see you next time. I'll be back with gameplay for God of War Ragnarok. So we'll see you then.